pictures I have on my camera roll.
All right, it's recording now, so whenever you're ready. But no rush, because I could always cut it too. Kids is sleeping?
No, she just got up. Now she's sitting at the window being the neighborhood watch. Yesterday, I found in the backyard this huge, like, woodchuck. And it was just, and she found it actually and like chased it, and I got so scared. I was like, what is that? Because I had never seen something like that before. So, okay. Here is our quote. Oh, you have to do your little welcome here.
Being a little informal, aren't you? Woodchuck. I used to usually call him Wood Charles until I get to know him. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Terrible Podcast. And today, Ashley has a quote for us, and I'm going to shirk my responsibilities and make her read it. Ashley, what's our quote? Good morning.
Okay. Our quote, I'm doing well. Our quote is from Buddha. It says, each morning we are born again. What we do today is what matters most.
Ooh, I like it short and sweet. Siddhartha.
It's short and sweet, and it's one of those, like, for me, kind of like, each day you begin anew. Kind of let go of whatever happened yesterday and just try and be your best self, live your best life, do your best work today.
Yeah, I like that. I think that recently I came to the understanding that, I used to just say the past is there to learn from, which is still applicable, but I feel now I use the past and the future. I like to incorporate them in my view sometimes when I'm looking at everything. I don't like to do it all the time, but when I'm trying to take a wider picture, get a wider view of the whole world around me or what's going on or whatever it is, if I'm to make a decision, I'll just back up, sit there, kind of hang out, a little contemplative mood, and just think about the past, the future, and what's going on now all as one, and say, what do you think the best route? Where have I come from? Where am I at now? And what does that mean about where I should go? So yeah, instead of getting tripped up, because you could get lost in the past forever. And that's what this quote's about. It's like, hey, every morning you're born again new. But again, right. The warning comes with that. Don't, that doesn't mean that you could just go and run around and screw everyone over and then don't worry about it until the next day.
Or the next day, it doesn't matter. Yeah, I think what's really important about this quote, which is what I'm trying to like kind of live my life like, is that, kind of this no regrets. Again, not saying be an asshole, be a jerk, but obviously there's going to be situations in your life and you'll be like, what if it didn't work out like that? Kind of like that sliding door, idea situation. And it's like, but what do you get from that? And there probably is a timeline and a universe where you did do something different and you are experiencing then something different as a result of that decision, but you don't know that right now. And what is that going to do by harping on that? I always think back to the reason I really like this quote is especially because I've made so many drastic life changes recently. It's like, you can't go back and be like, well, what if I did this? Well, what if because in this lifetime, you didn't, right? Or in this timeline, you didn't. When I first moved to LA, I had gotten a part-time job at a museum and I worked there for 2 weekends. And then I was like, look, this isn't going to work out for me because I'd gotten this other full-time job and they told me I was gonna have to probably work weekends and I didn't want to screw anyone over. And I left the job that was only on the weekend, which paid better, was closer to where I was living, had probably a better community of people that would have supported me. And I always look back and I'm like, but what if I didn't do that? But it's like, but then all the dominoes wouldn't have fallen the way that they did, And who knows, I could be in a totally different situation. We could not be recording. Gizzy could not be in my life. So I'm just trying to look at each day and like make decisions that you won't, and you can't ever say you're not going to make decisions that you'll regret, but try and be thoughtful in your decisions and trust your intuition and your gut. And then tomorrow, if you feel like you made a mistake, brush it off, clean slate, and try and do good.
Yeah, I think that's really important because that kind of that kind of thinking is what led me to what I was talking about with the perspective about seeing the past and the future together with the present as one when you go to make a decision. Because the flip side of that is a lot of times when I think I'm lost or I'm not doing what I should be, or and I'm getting really hard on myself or something, that's when I lose sight of that. And I don't realize that where I'm at is where I need to be to get where I'm
Mhm.
going. It's just the next step. Maybe I stepped in shit, but that doesn't mean I just stop and cry about it. I got to keep walking and maybe wipe my foot off when I get a chance, stuff like that. So a great example is I just sold these DJ speakers that I had for a while, and I used them at this place that I worked until about 2017. Then they just sat in storage, and I didn't really have a use for them. I had other equipment that I was using, so I always felt guilty about it and bad. I'm like, I have to sell these things. I have to sell them. So I finally just sold them on last Monday, and it's crazy because I could really use the money now. And the person that I met because of it is a great dude. Like, I think I made a really good friend. He's got like all this land in Massachusetts, and it's really crazy. So that whole time where I was hard on myself, it's like, no, it was perfect. That's exactly what needed to happen. So sometimes it's like, just sit back and let it happen.
Right, exactly. And I'm a huge believer now of manifesting things. Everyone's always like, "Isn't that the quote unquote secret?" Which I guess I never read The Secret, but the idea of putting out there what you want to happen in a positive way, um, and just letting the cards kind of fall where they're supposed to, and knowing that whatever comes your way is supposed to come your way at that specific time. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, that's half of the secret they give you is to just think and sit and wish about it all day, but the other half that they don't give you, because that's the feminine aspect. And if you employ the masculine aspect of action, then you can really get things done. But that's what you get when you listen to the terrible podcast. Not when you read The Secret, they won't tell you that. But when you listen to this show that's free,
yep.
you get all the secrets. So yeah, that's really what it is. If you put your attention on something, really wherever you put your attention is where things are going to manifest for you in your life. So if your attention is watching the sports, watching the Patriots all day and all that stuff, you're going to end up covered with like Patriots gear, and all your friends are going to like the Patriots. And and then if you're and if your ultimate goal is like truth and seeking out the truth, then you're going to end up with like long hair and not as many friends. But it's cool, man. It's what you want.
I also feel like maybe you're talking about me and not having a lot of friends and long hair, but but you know what? That's
Let's talk
fine.
about Jesus now.
um, okay. So
He only
um
needed 12, baby. He only needed 12.
So some interesting fun news that I did want to bring up as we're getting like now into like the actual like kind of meat and potatoes, if you will, of the podcast. Brandon and I have relaunched the podcast. We have a brand new logo. You should definitely follow us on our Instagram at Terrible2, TAROTBULL and the number 2. But we also have a designated Facebook page, and on the Facebook page you can actually get readings done by either one of us. So you get to pick how long you want the reading to be and which one of us you want to do the reading. So it'd be really cool to check that out. I would love to be able to provide readings for people on the topic of your choice, and kind of get a chance to meet some of our listeners. And we're trying to be very, very involved and consistent with our postings and things like that. So one of the things we are doing is actually every day posting our card of the day. I've been using this Mystic Mondays tarot, and I love it because the colors are so bright, and the edge of the card is like this like iridescent like silver, and it's just a really fun, beautiful deck. So check that out too. It's going to be in our stories or on our Facebook stories. Today my card of the day was the King of Pentacles. So going off that idea of manifesting and going off the idea of like kind of a clean slate, this is definitely something for me that's providing some kind of inspiration, hopefully, and hope that the King of Pentacles, you'll see it. And I thought when I first saw it, I was like, he is so cute. And I took I posted a picture of it so you can see what I'm talking about. This like older man, he's got like kind of this like gray beard, and kind of wearing a suit, and it's just all about prosperity and success, and in your business or in your job. And so hopefully all that starts coming my way. Hopefully we can look back on this and listen to this in like 6 months and be like, wow, How insightful.
Yeah, it's already happening. That's the thing.
I hope so. Yeah, I
It's already, you
definitely
just
believe it
don't see
is.
it yet because you haven't reached a precipice. But when you do and you look back, you're gonna be like, oh, that's the time when I was crushing it. See,
Yep.
that's what I'm talking about. So, a lot of people stress themselves out for the work they're doing, especially when they're working like we are. We're trying to do our own thing and go our own way with this podcast and like with my book and all these things and stuff you're doing with Aptly Unique on
Mm-hmm.
Instagram. Aptly Unique, everybody. Um, it's hard because it's really scary, especially when you come from a place of getting a weekly paycheck. You know what you have to do every day. This is different. You're telling yourself what you have to do. So it can be scary and you think it's a grind and you're not doing it yet. But let me tell you, as somebody who's done this, because I did this in the DJ business, like when I started in 2008, the whole time, for almost not quite 10 years, but at least 7 years, I was like, the whole time I thought I was just bad and getting better and I always had to be better. And I was never at a point, even though I was doing well in my brain, I just never like let myself enjoy being a good, no, I'll say a fucking great DJ. And then until I did, and then I'm like, wow, this is awesome. I'm at this, spot. But then when I look back at the times that I wasn't that good, but I was getting better and I was learning, those were still really fun. So now it's like, why not enjoy these times, even though it's struggling? What does that mean, struggle? You know what? Because I
Right.
don't have a lot of money or,
And do you know what? That's so funny to me because I met you, when you were DJing. I'm guessing that was potentially maybe at the start. I don't know.
yeah, that was
But
right near the beginning.
I was literally like so like in awe. I was like this young fucking little early 20s like imp going around, and I was like, he like works like every night DJing, like that's so fucking cool. He's got it all together. How funny is that? The different perspectives, right? To the people
Yeah.
that I was just like, wow.
Yeah, you never know how you can view it. And at the time, it's not like I was really down on myself. I loved what I was doing and I got it. But what I mean is, so now I'm just going to fully embody it, because if that's how I'm going to look back on it, why not enjoy it now? And then
Yep.
if I do fail, at least I had fun, and I had the right frame of mind. And that's the thing. You shouldn't be afraid to fail. Who cares?
Fail. First attempt in learning. There's my
Fail.
education part coming through. I would always say that during my classes, like, no, you didn't fail, because what did you, now you learned one way out of millions of ways that doesn't work.
Exactly.
All right, so
All right.
let's get into what we're doing today. Today, we're going back to kind of our normal setup of the podcast. We're going to look at one card. We're going to look at the Five of Wands today, and then we're going to go into what we normally do, look at the Rider-Waite, and then we'll take a look at the Thoth deck at the very end. So it's been a minute since we've done this. So for this part of the podcast, normally what I do is I give a description of the card, and then we kind of just go dive in, give our initial thoughts, um, and like feelings, and then we look at the different aspects of the cards.
Let's do it.
Yes. So before we go into this, Brandon, do you want to give us like an overview of what wands like supposed to symbolize? Because
Yeah,
it
for
has
sure.
been a minute.
It has been a minute. All right. So if you're new to the show, thank you for listening. I can give a quick break. Well, if I could talk, I'll give a quick breakdown of what all the suits actually
Yep.
mean. So if you're unfamiliar to the tarot overall, basically, if you're familiar with the 52 playing cards in a normal deck of cards that we use every day, it's the same format. It's based on those cards, actually, or the cards are based on the tarot. Those cards, I guess you could say. I mean, I guess it depends. I don't know. I wasn't there, but so anyway, the tarot deck is different because it has 78 instead of 52 cards, and 22 of those cards are the major arcana. So it's kind of like a work of art, each on its own, and they just have a number from 0 to 21 associated with it, depending on the deck they go with. Some are just 1 to 21, and then they have the full with no number. And then in some decks, the ones we use, it's a 0. And then you have the other 56 cards, which are pretty much identical to the 52 cards that people are familiar with. And then there's one more court card added. So instead of just having like a king, queen, and an ace, jack, king, queen, ace, you have a page, knight, queen, king in the ace. So that gives you 56. And then the suits derive from each other also. So cups are hearts, So think of anything with a cup as like a heart, anything with love. It's also called a cup because it can hold things like water and emotions. Then you have pentacles, and pentacles are on the tarot. It's round and it has a 5-pointed star. And then in the normal playing, the normal playing deck, it's symbolized by a diamond. So it's symbolized by a diamond because it's of the earth. Pentacles represent anything of this realm, earthly. It also can represent what your job is, how you support yourself, and how you feed your family and stuff like that. Next, we have the sword, which is also the same as the club in the playing deck. Swords represent air, esoterically. They also represent ideas, anything masculine, force, stuff like that. And obviously we'll break it down further as we go. This is just really brief. And if this is interesting to you guys, go back and listen to our old stuff because we break it down further.
Mm-hmm.
And or just hit me up for a reading and I could tell you all about this stuff or whatever. Also, okay, so those are swords, and then that brings us to wands, which are spades in normal deck, and wands are think of a staff of a wizard, think of a magic wand, think of anything that like a bow staff. That's all with a encompass. So it could be a weapon, it could be something that's used to create in this world. That's what we think of as magic. Magic is nothing more than just aligning your thoughts and emotions to create action. And if you're not doing that properly, like if you're in conflict, if you're thinking you should be doing something and you're not feeling right about doing it, then you're in conflict and you're still creating. You're just creating for somebody else, unfortunately. And that's where anxiety could come from. But anyway, that's a whole other subject. So when we talk about wands, we're thinking of fire also esoterically. So it could still have to do with ideas, but this is more, like I said, of the magic and the creation. It's taking that idea and mixing it with the emotion, with that creative side of your feminine, and putting it into action. And then you got that fire, baby. So that's what
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about. And then so I think that's good enough. So what do you think, Ashley? What would you like to
Yeah,
add to
no, I think that's absolutely great. And like Brandon said, listen to some of our past episodes because we go into like more in depth the different suits, and then we actually also talk about like the numbers. So we do talk a little bit about numerology. All right, so let's jump in here and talk about this Five of Wands card. Okay, so we're looking at the Rider Waite deck, and in the Five of Wands card, you see it's like a light blue background, and these five figures are standing on this. It looks like kind of like a grassy ground, but almost like there are some tracks that people have like dug things up, maybe, or by trampling on there or walking so far. It reminds me of when I was little and I'd walk in my backyard on the same path. And then, after a couple weeks, there wasn't any grass there anymore. Made my dad really angry. And so then you also see that there's these five figures, and they're each kind of brandishing one wand. So you've got the figure on the far left that's wearing a yellow kind of shirt, green tunic, red tights. And then you have the figure right next to him that's wearing just a red tunic. You've got the one behind the one in the red tunic that's a blue tunic with it looks like yellow sleeves. And then you've got the two figures on the right. One of them's wearing this like patterned blue tunic with yellow sleeves, and you see one in the far back on the left that's wearing a green tunic, like a forest green tunic, and like yellowish, potentially yellowish whitish sleeves. And they're all carrying a one wand. And the wands kind of look like, it's not like a magic wand. It looks kind of like just like a tree branch. So you've got some tree like leaf growth on there, and they're all holding them in kind of different angles, in one hand or both hands. Okay, so Brandon, initial thoughts. What do you think?
that? Well, initially, when I look at this card, I just see the construction of a star being put, like a 5-pointed star going into action.
Mm-hmm.
I used to see the A just getting built, but now, because of what I realize a five is and what five represents, which five really represents man when you talk about numerology. Because if you look at the Vitruvian man, we've talked about this in past episodes. You have the head, the legs, and the arms, symbolizing, the five protrusions from the body of the
Mm-hmm.
human. And when it's standing upright, it's in its full position. And then that also goes back to what we just talked about, the different, we touch on a couple of different with the different suits, we touched on the different like air, fire elements. That's the word I was looking for. So water and earth are the other elements. So if you have air, fire, water, and earth,
Hmm.
those would be the 5 lower points of the star. And then the top one is spirit. It's when those are all put in conjunction and working correctly, they create the spirit, which is nothing more than human consciousness in action. So I feel like this is like symbolizes that masculine energy because it looks like it's a bunch of boys really playing. I mean, it's kind of androgynous. There could be females in there too, but it symbolizes somebody who's doing the work, but they're younger. It's like a kid who at play. It's think about how boys learn while they're playing, while they're roughhousing. They learn limits and boundaries, and then they could work together. So this could also represent the different parts of yourself when you're younger, or even at an older stage. If you wake up and you're like, wait a minute, I'm not doing what I should be doing in this world. I want to get on the right track. You're going to have different parts of yourself feeling different ways. So this is about that alignment in that process. Just like we were talking about before, walking on the path, you're starting your new business. This is you at that stage. You're trying everything. There's like a little bit of conflict, but it's good stuff. It's like just like when puppies play and kittens play, they're establishing boundaries.
So I'm looking at this and I'm actually going to go like a little bit in the opposite direction. To me, it does look like it looks like conflict,
How
but
dare you? No, I'm
I
just
know. But
kidding.
your explanation almost made it seem like purposeful. This to me and I mean, I believe it or not, I was not a young boy, but it looks it looks like it just looks like these kids, these younger kids, definitely not adults, so adolescents or whatever, playing, but it's like one of those like how they like people always say like young boys can play so rough and stuff like it just looks like that to me. Like it looks like but and when you're playing like that, there's always that one kid that takes it a little too far
Hmm.
who he's like not playing like hitting things like in a like amusing kind of whatever, like he's really like I want to fucking hurt somebody, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
I've been
so
there. Allegedly, could it be?
yes. So like I'm looking at it and that's what I see. Like I see that maybe some of them are playing it as like this fun, maybe they're playing like maybe at that time they're playing like like a night situation or something given like
Hmm.
the way everything looks, but it doesn't necessarily look like it's just playful or purposeful. It kind of just looks like a free-for-all.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think you're correct there. And I just like to add, maybe to clarify what I said. I think that's right because that's how boys learn. Sometimes you have to go past the limit to find the limit, and sometimes somebody's got to get smacked in the face or punched
Yep.
and express that. And I think it's okay. And when you try to homogenize a society and tell people that they shouldn't have violence at all, well, I feel it's kind of like, when I was growing up, I had a friend who his mom, even in high school, wouldn't let him go to the mall. So he'd have to lie and come with me to the mall. And his mom and his parents are very strict on him, and whatever, it's so basically he rebelled against that, and it's no one's fault. This is just what happens in the world. It's just an example. So when he got a little bit of freedom later in his life, he kind of went crazy. Now if you
Mm-hmm.
put it to the same thing with violence, if you tell a male boy not to express any violence his whole life, and then when he gets in a situation where he's able to, what if he has psychopathic tendencies, whatever that means? Like what if he's just drawn to it? Because it can happen. This is what people don't understand. There's a thin line between somebody who's like a saint or a psychopath, because I feel like in order to be a sage or a saint, yeah, you might have to have a little bit of disconnect from people and be able to see a wider perspective of things. And then the same thing goes for a psychopath. So if you start walking a path in the wrong direction, that a detachment from humans could be used in a terrible way, as we've seen. Whatever. I don't want to talk about bad things, but you get it. So I feel like this is just like my little kitten Thumper, who I adopted from a shelter in New Haven, Connecticut. He is very rough and he bites a little bit and he scratches a little bit, but it's because he was taken away from his mom and his other kittens that would have taught him not to do that. Now, my other kitten, Snickers, my other cat, she doesn't do that at all because she was raised in a house properly. So, or not, whatever, cat raised properly in house, but she was raised around her siblings and with her mother. So if she tried to scratch or bite, she would be bitten or scratched back. Wow, that's crazy. A cat just walked by my outside because I'm in the basement. A cat just walked by and looked at me as I was talking about my cats. Hello,
Mhm.
synchronicity. I thought it was my cat. I'm like, how'd my cat get out? But it wasn't. So anyway, it's that same thing, right? So, and they say it's so much harder to teach a cat that when they're older. Now, humans obviously are different. You can teach a human if they're willing to learn at any age, they could learn this stuff. That's why it's never too late. So I like what you said, but then I would go and say, take it further and say it's okay to be a little violent sometimes, especially when you're young. So then the other kids, you could see what it's like. So say if you are violent and you act out and you're mean and you hit somebody, and then you see all the other kids look at you like, what an asshole. And then they say that, and then that makes you feel bad. Then you think about it overnight. You're like, well, maybe I shouldn't do that. So then next time when someone hits you and you get mad and you go to hit them, you're like, wait a minute, last time I did this, everyone thought I was an asshole. This kid didn't really mean to hit me, stuff like that. So
But going off of that, like you just said about your friend, I also had a friend who her
you have
parents
friends?
yeah,
I didn't have any friends. I was lying. No, just go
her
ahead.
parents were very strict about what she ate, and all through like high school, they were like, it was very much like she was not allowed to make decisions about what she ate. And so when she went to college, it was the same situation like your friend was like kind of went crazy. And so if someone's never been in a situation where they've had like a physical altercation of like slapping or whatever, maybe the one time they go like 100% fucking balls to the wall and fucking knock somebody out and really hurt them because they don't understand. Like, you don't need to put all of your force behind something like that. Obviously there's situations where maybe that's necessary, if it was like a dangerous, but most of the time we won't be in those kinds of situations. And if
Mhm.
you did something like that, not only could you really hurt or injure another person or a group of people, but then you're also like injuring your own self because you could, I'm going to use like get in trouble, quote unquote, get in trouble, but like you could, that
Get
could be,
arrested. Yeah, you
yeah,
can
it
hurt
could be
somebody.
a really negative impact. Like it could negatively impact like your life. And so, you know, I, I'm not saying that like go out and like start hitting people, but at the same time, like those are learning situations.
That's why
Um,
martial arts is a good way to do it for children or adults because you learn control. You get in those situations, you get punched, you get choked out in a controlled situation. Like when I was in the Marines, that boot camp, we used to box each other, and we did this thing called line training where it was like we would simulate, like we'd have to grab the other person, and then they would have to they wouldn't really do it, but they'd have to simulate hitting us like in the eyes or the throat. And so when they did that, we just have to loosen up and pretend. Then they would grab us, twist our arms, throw us on the ground, get us in holds. And especially the boxing thing, like you learn to get punched in the face a couple times. So this way, when it happens in real life, it's more controlled and you're like, oh, all right, it's not too bad. Because I don't know if anyone's listening to this and you've never been punched in the face. I have a few times.
I've never been punched in the face.
And the first time it happens, it's very startling. The first time it happened to me, I was like really in shock, and it didn't really hurt as much as like, what the fuck just happened? So there was a disconnect. Now, when I went to the Marines, I had it happen a couple times in training and stuff, and I never really got into fights or anything, just like silly things. But so now if it happens to me, I'll be able to react better because I've had that experience. Just like the gas chamber, they put us in the gas chamber. We have to take off our they put us in a gas chamber, yeah, with riot control, CES gas. I don't think they use this anymore because they're not supposed to. And
I
they
don't,
have
are
us,
you being serious right now?
yeah, and they have us take our gas masks off, and you have to take a deep breath of the riot control stuff, and you cough because they want you to experience that. So if it happens to you in combat or in a situation, you're like, oh, I already did this. It's, I could get through it. Because honestly, it's not that bad. It sucks. Trust me, it does. Like, I'm not gonna. It's like, it's the worst. Like, imagine 100 times the spiciest things you've ever eaten going all the way up your nose and every, just like razor blades. That's kind of what it felt like. But if you can detach from that and say to yourself, this isn't the worst thing, because think about it, in that situation, if you're in the Marines, if you're taking also someone shooting at you, you have to get your wits together and say, listen, this gas is not as bad as those bullets, so I got to get cover, it's stuff like that. So I mean, that's a crazy situation, but it's the same thing, getting punched in the face, roughhousing. If you're an adult and somebody elbows you by mistake and you freak out and you do something, decisions made in anger can't be taken back. So if
Right.
you're used to getting hit or punched, think about fighters like a UFC fighter. These people apparently are the chillest people ever to be around because they're used to getting the shit beat out of them. They don't care. They're just chill. They just, they
Yep.
get it. So same thing.
Okay.
Okay, that
See,
was deep.
this is no, but this is going back to what I said in the last episode. It's like, what is your life? I
Me?
wish, yeah, like you're just like, like when you go in a gas chamber, and I was
Oh,
like,
dude.
wait, what? Like,
Listen,
no, no, I don't.
I like to, I don't like to talk too much current events on the show. We just talk about things to chase despair away. But I'll just say that, I've made choices, and if you follow me on social media, you'll see that I'll just say my name on Instagram is Brandon No Mask Jones Smith. And the reason behind the thing about the mask is because I've been through all these situations in my life, and I've had a lot of life experience around the world and seeing how government and everything works and systems of control, but just how people and psychology, all this stuff. And I know about medical and all this stuff. So that when I make my choices, it's all based on this, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I know what it's like. I've been in a gas chamber, so if there was a situation, trust me, I'll put a gas mask on if you give me one, if we really need it. Anyway. Ashley, take the show back over.
Yeah. On that note, let's go back into the card here. And all right, so we did our initial thoughts. Now let's kind of do a deep dive. I like starting always, I like starting with the background. So let's start with the sky and the ground. What are your thoughts there? The sky is this blue, and then the ground you have is like, depending on the card that you're looking at, could be like multiple colors: yellow, green,
Uh,
purple.
I'll say that well, really quickly, I did have a point I was gonna make. I was just gonna rant, but I forgot. It'll come back to me back then. But anyway, I was just trying to make it funny. But what I wanted to say though about the sky and the ground, what I really see here is, if you think about when you were a child, when I was a kid, there was things like when I was out playing, nothing else mattered in the world. I wasn't really worried about too many other things, except there was like this one summer that I was really worried. It was like seventh grade into eighth grade, because I broke the seventh grade camera's teacher by mistake, and I was supposed to replace it. And I didn't tell anybody. So I was going to try to get a job and save money, but I failed at it. So that like ruined my whole summer. It was so funny. And then they forgot about it, I think. I don't even remember. But anyway, so I was like so paranoid, like even the day before, like I didn't want to go to school. It was so funny. So anyway, but other than that, in my as my childhood, even these days when I'm out hiking or playing or whatever, I feel like nothing else exists. And I love how this card embodies that, because you have the ground, so they're very grounded. And then it's just the sky. You don't see any trees. There's really nothing else. It's just far in the background. And that's kind of what your perspective is like when you're a kid. Nothing else matters. Your brain's just filling the rest in, that it's sky and trees. It could be whatever. You're just hanging out with your friends, having a good time. And that's what I'm getting when I see the ground in the sky.
See,
What
now
do you
for
see with
me,
the
looking at
colors? Go
it,
ahead. Yeah.
when I see it, yes, they're grounded. Their feet, all of their feet are on the ground. No one's like jumping or anything like that. But the sky is fills a majority of the space in terms of the background, and the color is blue, which I would associate with water, which is like that emotionality. And like we were talking about earlier, even though they might be grounded, I think a lot of times when you're in a situation like this, even when you're like play fighting, whatever, your emotions do take over, and it's kind of enveloping them. Um, and in terms of like maybe they're like, getting really, really into it instead of being like, what are we doing? Like, what is this?
Mm.
Um, so that's what my thoughts are in terms of seeing the background color. When I look at the ground, I also, again, depending on the card that you're looking at, it's not one solid color. So I see like kind of, even though their feet are on the ground, maybe they're kind of losing some of that connectivity to being grounded in the actual earth, because they've trampled it. Now
Mm-hmm.
you're getting into my thoughts here. I'm like, obviously I've never raised a son or had like a little boy, but I'm like, that's what I would think. I don't know.
Yeah, no. Well, that's what's great about the tarot. It's up to all different interpretations. So I would say if somebody was, like Ashley right now, she's kind of conflicted about why she feels that way, and she's trying to figure it out. That's an area to go into quiet contemplation and be like, why does this, why does Brandon think this and I think that? And, not that I'm right or she's wrong or she's right and I'm wrong. It's just a way to gain a perspective and then examine that. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just like doing research into your own psyche. That's really all it is. That's what the tarot is. And then if I wanted to look at this, say biblically, from a standpoint of the Bible, a Judeo-Christian, or, just as a Christian of the Bible, you think of like as above, so below, when they talk about the waters above and the firmament, and you just mentioned blue in the water, this is really if you look at and you think of as above, so below, and if you think of this as a realm where we have to kind of like get our behaviors in line to get to the next level, this could be that. Like they're just working here on the ground, and what they're doing symbolizes what needs to be done to get onto that next level, to the waters above, to transcend through the firmament. And even though they're way at a young stage, they're displaying the right behavior, even though if it looks like they're fighting, it's like righteous anger. It's just the
Mhm.
little brother of that. It's righteous play, righteous play fighting.
Okay, so now let's get into the actual figures. Let's we can group them all together. What are your thoughts here on all of them?
Well, I think, like I said earlier a little bit, they kind of represent different aspects of one's own, I guess you could say, their psyche or their mind. People say there's like 4 sides or 5 sides of the mind, all this stuff.
Mhm.
It could represent different aspects, emotional thought, emotional feelings. Then you have thought processes, just bodily feelings, internal gut feelings, stuff like that. And this is that what I feel is really being symbolized. And you could look at the different colors as that. You could probably, if you were a little esoterically better than I am with colors, you could probably go in there and even name one. Like you could say like that, the yellow guy, that's like the ego going strong. He's like courage. He has that staff straight up. The guy with the red, he's swinging it down. That could be an aspect of like anger or something. Like he looks like he's about to hit somebody with it. Like he looks like the kid, like you said, he's the one who's taken a little too far.
Yeah, and if you look at him, he is the only one out of all of them that's wearing a hat.
Oh
And
yeah.
maybe that's covering up that like spiritual aspect, or even that idea of like that responsibility, or the like consciousness of being like, what are we doing? To me, my eyes go right to him.
Wow, yeah, I didn't even notice that. I like that maybe he's covering up a bald spot he's insecure about, so he's beating up the other kids because they have long, beautiful hair. Maybe that's just something I don't know. Maybe I don't, for some reason I don't know.
But it's just like, I'm looking at a whole bunch of different interpretations of the rider weight card right here on my computer, and they again, my eyes just go right to him. I think it was really purposeful that he's like almost also right in the center of the card. Um, and he's the one that, to me, that looks like there's the most movement in his wand. He looks like, because he has both hands on it, and it looks like he's like taking it and is almost trying to hit. Whereas everyone else is kind of like, kind of like da 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 da. Like, to me, they don't look like dangerous or anything. He looks like he is angry and like
Hmm.
ready to fight.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And if you look, all the other kids, or all the other figures, they have this like the yellow very prominent in like in their upper half. Um, so maybe, and I'm not going to try to get into like gang wars here or anything like that, but he so stands out because he's clothed so differently.
Yeah.
And so maybe this is someone trying to prove themselves. And if you look at that figure, the red one, um, his boots are actually blue. So the part that is grounded, that's touching the ground, again, going back to what I said about blue, you have that emotion there where it's like he's lacking that connection of being like, calm down. Like he is strictly driven by his feelings and his emotions.
Hmm.
And I'm using the word he, it could be a she. I'm going to say they. They are very much driven by that. That's what I feel when I look at this. And if you then look at like kind of the way that the rest of the figures are structured around him, it almost kind of reminds me of, it could be like a monkey in the middle kind of thing, because he is right in the center of them. So maybe they are like ganging up on him. And I think sometimes you have that feeling of like the whole world is against me, and then you get on the defensive because
Hmm.
it's like, well, who's going to protect me? I have to protect myself. Um, and maybe he's just trying to beat down all these other parts of his psyche that are creeping in with this negativity. Because I doubt that if they were bringing positivity, he'd be like, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. Like, I doubt that, you know?
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. That's a pretty interesting observation there, Ashley.
All right. And so I want to also look at the wands. If you look at them, again, I'm going back to this red figure. My eyes keep going to notice that his wand has no little leaves on it. There's no growth.
Yeah.
So is this maybe him being stuck in this childlike mindset, or this mindset of like me against the world, very defensive, not willing to let people in? And maybe there is no growth there. There's no new life, because he's always feeling he has to use it to beat things away. Getting real deep here on this red figure. I don't want to say that I like really identify with him.
Tell me more
But
about your stick, Ashley.
I know. but like
Are you
but
beating
now
people with a stick? You're not telling us.
but it's like the more that I look at it, the more I'm like, you know, it's almost like tragic, you know, this feeling of being alone or abandoned. And now I'm really getting into it here of like, and maybe it's like trampling the growth underneath him on the ground, but also on that wand. He can't plant it and let it grow to be like this beautiful tree, because he feels like he constantly needs that as a defense mechanism.
Yeah, like overuse.
Mm-hmm. And you know what's going to happen then, right? What's going to happen if he keeps using it? Oh, who is this? Who is here? Look, it's our favorite co-star here, Gizmo.
What's up, Gizzy?
She's like, Mom, pay attention to me.
Just for everyone who's listening, Gizzy just crawled all over Ashley, so
Yeah,
it's got a little Gizzy break. She has something to
literally
say. What do you
right
have
on
to say
my.
about this card?
She's like, Mom, can I have a treat?
Come on, Gizzy. What do you have to say about this card?
You know what I found? She like loves laying right on. Oh,
What happened? Did I lose you?
no. Okay. No, that's just me. She loves laying on anything that's like she shouldn't be laying on. She loves laying on um a remote or my phone or any kind of wires. Like I have a plugged in mouse to my laptop. She wants to lay on that so that you can't get at it. And she has like no concept of like, that's really not helpful. Anyway, okay, so I'm sorry. I got very distracted.
Either that or she's just really smart and she knows if you lay there, then she's going to get attention from you.
Yeah, well, yeah. Um,
Don't
okay.
underestimate your animals.
All right. So as I was saying, you know, when he's overusing this wand as like a defense mechanism, what's eventually going to happen to it? It's going to get weaker, right? And eventually it could break. And then what is he left with? He has no way of defending himself, and he doesn't have the proper tools mentally, emotionally, to deal with any particular like specific conflict that comes into his life.
Do you see a way out for him? Like, how could he solve this, do you think? If that was you, how would you solve it?
I'd put the stick down.
There you go. Well, so you think totally putting it down?
And planting it and letting it grow. I'm not somebody that's big on conflict as it is. My turn in terms of conflict resolution, I'm somebody that very much just like kind of walks away. Um like, okay, I don't want to have this conversation, like, so it's over. Um because I find a lot of times when senses are heightened, and you have anger, or you have these other, you don't get any kind of resolution. And once you say something and it's out there, you can't take it back.
Or once you do something and it's out there?
Right. And so I like to be as calm, cool, collected as I can. And so I try not to engage when it like things are like that. I'm like, I'd rather just like take a beat, you know, couple hours, couple days, a night, whatever, and then be like, and honestly, like I am, and that's, I know it's an avoidance technique. I also am somebody that when somebody is like very angry with me, which does happen, I know you're probably like, well, you're an adult woman. How many times are people getting angry and yelling at you? Probably more than you think. And I am somebody that just shuts down. I'm like, yep, 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 yep. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because that's how I was growing up. And so again, because I just don't want to engage. I just don't see there being a point. Um, so if I'm looking at it, how do you make it stronger? Well, you need to let it grow and get some new growth on there. And eventually, even though it starts off weak, it will grow to be stronger. I know that's really hard, because if that's your way of like protecting yourself, right? You're like, well, then what am I left with? I feel like I have nothing.
Well, that's where, having faith comes in and knowing that you're making the right choice. And I think it's great because if he does put that stick down right in the position it's in, if they just lower it down all the way, it will form that star. And then the guy with the yellow just has to bring it in and put it down above it. So
Yep.
maybe that you're right. Maybe he has to do that. And the way to do it is for the other guys to convince him that's the right way to do it. Like, and how can they convince him? Not by telling him, just by having fun and doing it the right way. And then he could see it, embody it for himself, and realize that is the truth for him instead of
Mm-hmm.
being told and then doing it because he feels bad and then he still wants to do it. And then secretly he goes and finds other ways to beat people with sticks. He becomes a
Right.
cop, and then he's a bad cop, So, yeah.
um, okay. So any final thoughts here on the look of this card before we go into in different types of readings?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, perfect. So now what we do is we take this card and we see how we would interpret it in a variety of different types of readings. So Brandon, let's say this card came up in just a general reading. What would you say?
If this card came up in a general reading for somebody, I would tell them that, if you're on the path for self-knowledge and getting to know yourself, it's really about self-control. And people use that word. I think it's like one of those things that's hidden in plain sight because they just say it so much, but they don't, and no one ever really tells you what it's really about. They just say you got to control yourself. And you're like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. And then when you don't, you feel bad, and then you punish yourself, and that's has nothing to do with self-control because now you're a self-tyrant. So yeah, you might be controlling yourself, but So I would say that this is about the positive way of getting to self-control, that it's okay to have inner conflict. You can only start where you find yourself. And if you are having inner conflict and you want to solve that, well, then it's first you have to be okay with it and you have to make peace and accept it, and then get to know yourself. And then you could build that star.
So if this came up for me in a general reading, I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to say that there's like conflict or competition in some aspect of the person whose cards I'm reading in their life. And maybe it's in a realm that you're not used to. So maybe it's a conflict with somebody that you never really fought with before, or it's somebody that or it's in an area where you're like, well, I thought I was like the best at this. And going into like,
Yep.
well, then again, how do you resolve this? Like, what is the conflict resolution here? In terms of in terms of if someone's competing with you in something, in terms of sports or school or something like, or work, I, having come from a life of competition, I don't want to be like, I don't believe in competing with other people, but I honestly really don't. And I feel like that's what makes the best athletes. I'm not competing to beat you. I'm competing for myself. Like, I never cared. Like, I never watched other people like, oh my God, I have to go against this one. Oh my God. Maybe when I was younger, but as I got older, I was like, who cares? It's not about, for me, obviously, it's like, you want to win, but if you're so fixated on that other person, you're not working on yourself.
It's like that saying, the only person you should compare yourself to is yourself yesterday.
Kind of like our quote from this morning.
Yeah.
Um,
That's lovely. I love it. You're
but
exactly dead on, in my
so,
opinion.
and then I would also say, like, if it's something that can be talked about, maybe pushing yourself to get out of your comfort level and say, like, how do we talk about this? I have found, when I was going through the early stages of my separation and divorce, like, I did go to therapy, and my therapist always encouraged me to write everything down. And I'm a huge list taker anyway. And even like in jobs when I was going for promotion, or I was trying to get a specific project, I would make lists of like, I'm already doing this, just because it helps me not to forget anything. And it helps me not to get lost in the emotion of the moment when I have something physically written down. So, maybe pushing yourself to say, like, let's have this kind of hard conversation to try to resolve this conflict, as opposed to like, let's just beat the shit out of each other. because you know that's going to end with both of you just being bruised in terms of your ego and your physical person. Or, you could just avoid it like how I normally do. And I'm not saying that that's right or wrong.
Yeah.
I don't think it's right. Okay. So let's talk about if this comes up in a love reading. What would you say?
Well, I would just like to say that you're right what you said, and I think there's like a middle way to find middle ground. Sometimes you might have to fight, and then you can learn from it, and then sometimes you could avoid it. But there's always another way too. But it's about learning in that way and just being true to yourself. And if this card came up in a love reading, I would say to the person, find which figure in this card you identify with the most. That's really a good technique. I like to use when I'm talking to people, like if there's multiple figures, who do you identify with this card in this card? And then I would just go a little further in that and ask why. So like earlier you said you identified with the guy with the red. So if it was a love reading and someone said, oh, I identify with the guy in the red, then I would just kind of give them, pointing back to what you said earlier in the episode about that. Maybe you're just trying too hard to make things happen, and that's why it's not happening. Maybe you have to have a little faith and rely on the people around you a little bit more, Ashley?
Okay, so I'm going to go into if this, I'm going to divide it up, right? If this was a love reading, I'd talk about if the person is single and if they're in a relationship. If they're in a relationship, I 100% agree with what you just said, because sometimes it's easy to play the victim in a relationship. And then maybe you are that red person where you feel like you have to put up all these walls of like, why is this person doing this? But then sometimes, I think we need to take ownership. Like I have been the 4 other people in that picture, and I have constantly picked and picked and picked and picked and picked. And why am I doing that? I think it comes a little bit from insecurity, but it also comes from a lack of acceptance of who the other person is. The only person
Yeah.
I know that is perfect is Gizzy. And
Well, we're all perfect. But
yeah, but she's beyond perfect.
No,
And but even then, like, some people are going to say that she's not. And it's all a matter of perspective. And I'm picking on somebody else, but it's like one of those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. I know I do things that are infuriating. I am incredibly difficult to live with in terms of I like things the way that I like them. I'm also very messy. There's clothes strewn about this house, and I mean, I could pick them up, and I know I should pick them up, but I don't. And so it's like, if somebody can accept me, why do I feel the need to pick on them? So that's what I talk about if you're in a relationship, kind of going into which character do you feel like you're playing, the person who's the one, the bully, or do you feel like you're the one being bullied? If you're the one feeling like someone's picking on you, there's a couple things there. One, is this somebody that actually is abusive, verbally, psychologically? I hope we wouldn't have to get into physically, but like, then why are you allowing yourself to be in that situation? Or is it this kind of complex you have of always playing the victim? In which case, why do you feel like everyone's always out to get you? So that would be if you're in a relationship. Wow, I feel like I'm getting like so into this today. I am like being like, it's almost like I have a degree in psychology, which I don't, but so
thank God.
Yeah. So, and if you're single, I would say there's again a couple ways of looking at it. Are you looking for you to have multiple suitors? I went through a period like that. I think that's something that a lot of younger people do, where it's like, oh my God, like all of these guys like want to be with me, and they're like competing for like my attention. And it's like, okay, all right, take a seat. And I can look at that now as being, a 30-something-year-old, somewhat grown adult, and be like, why do you need that kind of attention? Why do you need that kind of validation? Because the reality is, do you know how many people you really need? 0, 1. But if you did feel like you wanted somebody in your life, you just need one person. But it also feels like then you're holding people at arm's length of like, I want to have all this competition because that's going to validate who I am. And then I don't have to pick one person to actually connect with. So that's what I'd say if you're single. I'm getting really into it today.
Take the gun out of your mouth. Don't shoot yourself yet. people, not us, but people listening. No, I'm just
Yeah, but and then if you're feeling like that, you obviously should get like a reading done by me because I obviously understand your plight and I've lived that life and I can help out. You know, let me fix your life and hopefully that helps me fix mine. Um,
yeah, well, that's
okay.
what it's all about, helping each other by helping ourselves. And that's really what it is. Like I feel, in my opinion, the more, when I give a reading, I'm thinking more of like just trying to point a direction, not like giving advice. And it's, what can I get out of this for myself? So I feel like I become better. And then because of that, they have a positive transaction. But I did want to say, about what you said. There's a couple things. I was going to say trigger warning because you're like, I don't have a degree in psychology. And, that's okay if you don't have a degree in psychology, because in my opinion, there's other schools of thought that aren't always taught at universities. And a lot of times what I see at universities is just validation of one system, which they believe to be correct. Where I like to take a wider approach. I like to incorporate, all kinds of stuff that people would consider theology or mysticism, mainstream stuff to anything. What I think is whatever worked for somebody. So just because you don't have a degree, that doesn't mean, life experience is probably
Mm-hmm.
way better than that. And you can even look at that, and as far as like business, somebody who like dropped out of, think about how many business owners didn't even go to high school, and they just are crushing it. They're millionaires with giant homes or whatever you want. But so I digress. And the other thing I wanted to say was that, with this red card, that figure, it there's a possibility that if somebody had an issue or identified with him, because if you think about the red stage in alchemy, it's the rubido, it's the burning off. It's like what we talked about in the previous episode with the phoenix rising from the ashes. So a lot of that times when somebody's going through that, there's a lot of anger involved. And in our society, we're always told to not display anger, that you're supposed to push it down, or only men are supposed to display anger, whereas there is a time sometimes for righteous anger and to express yourself, and sometimes you need to express it as anger, and then you can understand it. Once you start to express, you can get a better grip on it. But if you don't, or if somebody doesn't, it could manifest in other ways unhealthily. So I think,
Mm-hmm.
if somebody's saying that they're uh identifying with that card, that, so say like earlier you said you had a problem with him doing all that. Well, say somebody like you needs to express this anger, but you are afraid because you think, because you have a problem seeing it, that's how society's going to see it, or whatever it is. You get what I'm saying? So I would say, going back to what I said before, where everyone's perfect, that you can only progress forward from where you are. You can't look at somebody like me and be like, oh my God, Brandon's got it all figured out. Oh my God, he's so smart. Well, yeah, but I sleep on the floor and I live right now with my parents, guys. So, but, so you can only start where you are. So if you feel like maybe you're mad at something, then go into it, go break something. uh See how you feel about it. You might feel good, you might be like, yeah, fuck that, because sometimes you really need to express that, especially if you have people around you who are treating you very unfairly and it's a situation that's just building up. Because
Mm-hmm.
if it gets to a point, if like I'm a kind of person who, sometimes I'll mask my needs to feel, so I'm like not such a pain in the ass, so I could be easier for others to hang around with. I'll say it that way. I don't want to be a burden on people, right? But sometimes, that, which is a good trait to have sometimes, but it could be unhealthy too, because then I could just allow people to walk all over me sometimes and just do it, and yeah, and then I get angry and inside, and then finally it builds up to a point where I just snap. Well, recently I've tried this thing where I just am like, nope, like Caesar Blonde, right away. If
Yep.
someone's doing that, I just build those boundaries. And sometimes I went too far and there was like an argument. Then I backed off. But that's, I feel it's better this way, because I've had arguments before where I was like, yo, just nuclear, like, fuck this. I don't even care about that person anymore. And like you said, you say things and do things that you can never take back. So in that same way, if you can find a way to express, or if a person could find a way to express that anger, and I found same thing with me now. When I get mad about something, I used to be like, oh, don't get mad. But now I'm like, wait, why am I mad? I'm like, yeah. And then I'm like, what should I do with this anger? Should I go break something, or what's going on? Or sometimes I do something I regret. I'm not just saying I'm perfect, guys, but that's what I'm starting to work with. So
Yep.
just wanted to give that perspective.
All right, so let's jump into this being in a career focused reading.
All right. I would say you go first on this one. Haha, I forgot
Okay.
about that. Haha, I remembered.
Okay, so if I'm looking at I'm going to say that if I'm looking at this in a career focused reading, obviously I'm going to say that there's potentially some kind of competition or conflict, either with a specific project, maybe you're having trouble breaking into it or coming up with ideas about it, or you're in a position where you feel like I think everyone always feels like they should be making more money. Like, oh, I deserve this. And it's like, yeah, I have my own thoughts on that. But anyway, maybe it's one of those situations where you're like, I'm asking for a raise or promotion, or I'm asking for a change of title. And you feel like it can be very intimidating. And I can also speak to that, like as a woman, like it's very difficult to go into a situation like that because, you know, my own background, I've always like, I just feel like I was taught like, oh yeah, you deserve this. And it's like, but then how do you ask for it? Whereas I feel like a lot of times a man will just be like, give it to me. And I'm always like, hi, please, can I have this? But also, like, let me tell you, and if you don't give it to me, that's also fine. And if you want to give me a pay reduction, that's okay. Like that's how I go into those kinds of situations sometimes. So maybe there's like a conflict with that. Maybe it's with a supervisor, or it's somebody that you work with where you're having an issue with them and you feel like it could potentially be a toxic environment and you want to leave and go somewhere else, break into a totally new industry. You know, that can feel very much like overwhelming and like you're being beaten down because you're trying your best but you're not getting anywhere, and there's no success and everything is so competitive. But I'm going to say that if this card comes up, you have to look at it and say, sometimes all of those things are just in your head. And um, nothing is going to change unless you manifest it, you put it out there and you ask for that change. You know, you're never going to get the raise, you're never going to get the pay rate that you feel you deserve unless you say something. And if you feel like there's, you know, something with a project, I often like to do something totally opposite of what I've been focusing on to kind of clear my head. So I come back and look at it in a totally different perspective. But like, if you want to have any kind of victory, there's a fight associated with victory, right?
Yeah, totally, man. You got to fight for what you want.
So, and then I also like talking about if this card comes up, maybe someone's looking at like what kind of places or what kind of career path should I go into. So if I'm looking at this, I'm going to say like, obviously an athlete, but I'm also going to say maybe like sales. You know how like you get beaten down by salespeople. Brandon, I'm talking to you.
Come on, what can I do to get you in this podcast today? What can
Yes.
we do to get you in this lovely brand new podcast, Ashley? Today, we'll get you driving down the street.
Yes.
You don't want to be driving though. You want to be traveling. That's another podcast though. We don't drive. That's comedy. Sorry.
So, you know, maybe you're in sales or you're an
Yeah.
athlete and
Ooh,
and
this
by
is good for athlete. This card would be great for an athlete.
Okay, so what do you think?
You sure? You done? I don't want to just
Yeah,
hang up.
no,
Okay,
I'm done.
okay. I was gonna say that there's like a constant theme. So if you're somebody who's well, I want to back up even further and just say right now in these times, a lot of people are feeling that they have to branch out on their own and do their own thing now more than ever because of, you know, guidelines and restrictions and certain people. And like before, I was saying something about wearing masks, and I don't judge people. If you want to wear a mask, wear a mask. You know, I just feel if you don't have, you know, whatever. So I think that some people that, you know, there's more people, maybe not right in my director, but there's a lot more people that don't want to do that, wear a mask or like submit to these regulations. And I feel that these are the ones who are going to be branching out and doing their own thing a lot. So if you're one of these people, or if you're just somebody who's branching out on their own and you do want to wear a mask, whatever it is, again, I'm not judging anybody. I think that there's a constant theme that runs through all the podcasts that Ashley and I have done. So if you're one of these people, you should definitely go to terrible.com, listen to those. And then there's even older ones. You can go get the old ones. There's like a secret way. I'll put a link though to this. It's under the comedy LOL. So if you go to iTunes or wherever you get, you know, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts, or if you have, like I do, I have like a Galaxy. So there's just a podcast app. Just search comedy LOL as one word, and you can get the Brand Bonanza podcast too, but you'll get all the old ones of Ashley and me. And every time, most of the times, she doesn't know it, but I was secretly trying to convince her to start her own business. So I kept every time there was a career reading, I would say, if someone's trying to start their own thing, and then I would just apply it to that because I'm somebody who has worked on my own and done my own thing. So if you're somebody who is that, you definitely value, and I would say this card represents that perfectly. And especially if you go back to that red figure, if you're somebody who identifies with that, because a lot of times when you branch out on your own and you start to do your own thing, there's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of anger if things don't go your way or if it doesn't go how you think it's supposed to. But you got to remember there's other people around you that are there to help you and that are already starting to form it. And the thing is, see, this guy, you might think he's lost in anger and he's just swinging that stick, but that's perfect because that is the part of that star that needs to be there if you're thinking that they're building a star, a five-pointed star with those wands. That is an aspect that could be used. A lot of the new age, if you look into, like we talked about earlier, The Secret, that's part of the new age. If you look at like Buddhism or any of these quote unquote religions of the new age, a lot of them will tell you to get rid of your ego and just like you want to meditate all day till it goes away. And I say that that is wrong because I feel, in my opinion, that um it just needs to be put in proper balance. Yes, in the society, a lot of us are coming from our ego and we're stuck in that mindset, that brain way of thinking in that perspective. So that's why earlier in my life, meditation helped me a lot because it helped me get into proper alignment. But now I don't meditate. Every once in a while I will, but I feel that right now I'm more at a better balance and I could work on other aspects of myself. So I feel like it's everything's evolving, just like, so if you're on a career path, it's the same thing. You have to change with the times. In these times, oh, they are a changing. And if
Hmm.
you're somebody who isn't afraid, if you're somebody who's willing to hustle and build and work with what you want, now is the time more than ever to manifest it because so many, unfortunately, so many other businesses are either failing or so many people are living in fear and they don't want to do these things. So you don't even have to start your own business. Even if you just want to cut lawns right now, people are afraid to go outside. You could start a business and you could wear a mask because you're cutting a lawn and it's fine. Because, if I was cutting lawn, I'd wear a mask. So anyway,
Yes. Love that.
thanks.
Okay.
Of
Anything else we
course.
want to talk about career before we go on to the reverse of this?
No, again, just go back and listen to all our other episodes because there's really a lot of good advice in there. And if you go back and you find something that you have an issue with or you love, let us know. We could talk about it again on another episode.
Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about with this card is if you got it in a reading, but it was reversed, which basically means upside down. So it's not necessarily always the inverse meaning of what we've just talked about with all of the different types of readings. Sometimes it can be a little bit more. So, Brandon, let's say this card came up in a reading and it was reversed or upside down. What would you say?
I would say that I'm glad that you brought this up, honestly, because if you think of that five-pointed star upside down, that's where everyone sees the pentagram. Oh my God, it's evil, it's the devil, it's Satan. So this could be and I don't say that I agree with all that stuff. I feel like these symbols can be used. They're just like a tool, it's like a gun or a hammer. You can use it to build a house, or you can use it to go to jail by, hurting people. So I think that if you look at the aspect of the upside down five-pointed star as just a symbol, if you look at that as inversion, as walking the wrong path, that could be that the person is maybe on the wrong path right now, but they're still, like, it's never too late. You can always change your behavior, alter behavior, and make peace with yourself. So that's what I would say. Is that the problem? Maybe this conflict that you're having is unhealthy. Like you were saying earlier, sometimes the conflict, like I was saying, it's healthy, but if it comes reversed, and it doesn't even have to come reversed, it could just, because I like a lot of times I used to give readings where I would just do it randomly, but now I just like to do them a lot of times all right side up and then just look at all aspects of the card, even reversed, and kind of get an idea because it could be that meaning too. So if I was going to say that, it could even come right side up and I could say maybe you're having some conflict that's leading you down the wrong path, or you're listening maybe to the wrong voices. And obviously they're the only ones who could decide that.
Yes. So for me, I'm looking at it and kind of going off of what I said before about like way of dealing with conflict. I'm going to say the reverse of this would be kind of if you're talking fight or flight, it would be the flight. It would be like
I like that.
just total avoidance. Um so just saying like, I don't want to deal with this. And you know what? Sometimes you don't have the bandwidth to deal with something at that particular moment. And
Yeah.
sometimes you just aren't like mature enough emotionally to be able to have that conversation or deal with the conflict. And there's nothing wrong with that. Um, I think with being able to say like, just not ready for this right now, and I'm just gonna leave. There's also nothing wrong with removing yourself from a situation you don't want to be a part of. You don't need
Yeah.
to give anyone an excuse or a reason. If something doesn't feel right to you, you can just say like, you know what? Like one of my favorite memes, the SpongeBob meme where he's like, I'm a head out. And it's like him getting up from the chair. Like there's nothing wrong with that, you know?
Yeah, you're right. You're totally right. I agree
And
with you.
and if you're looking at it like even from any perspective, relationships or career, it's like if something isn't worth fighting for, there's no reason to stay and fight.
Yeah. I think the only time it could become negative is if you abuse it and it starts to alter your behavior in a negative way. If you start to avoid people altogether or a person or situation, and it's something that needs to be, excuse me, resolved. But not everything needs to be resolved, especially if the other person isn't receptive to what you have to say. Sometimes
Mhm.
you have to remove yourself from a situation and learn and grow as a person. And, before you can come back, and only you can decide that. And I feel like you said, if you feel like you need to get out of the situation, to somebody else that might seem wrong. They might be like, no, you need to deal with it. But yeah, that's their path. For you, get out of it, figure it out, fix yourself, and then maybe attempt again. But
Mhm.
yeah, definitely.
Um Okay, so now for the next part of our podcast, we look at the same card but in a different deck. So for those of us that are just kind of just getting into our podcast, maybe it's your first time listening, there are many different tarot decks out there, and a lot of them are so beautifully illustrated, but they are not. It's not a one size fits all situation. So each deck has its own symbols and its own color scheme, and it has a different interpretation. So just because I pick the Five of Wands in one deck does not mean that the interpretation of the Rider Waite Five of Wands is going to be the same as the Five of Wands in another deck. So we're looking at another deck, dissecting kind of its artwork and just looking at our initial thoughts. So for this part, Brandon picks the card and does a description, and we just give our initial thoughts of it.
All right. So usually the deck that we've been going with is Aleister Crowley Thoth deck. And Aleister Crowley is one of these figures in history, or he's highly debated, and a lot of people will say he's evil. But we described on the last podcast, give it a listen, kind of our thoughts on it and about art and how basically everything is God's creation. It's really up to the person who's interpreting it. Interpreting. I just made a word. It's up to the person who's interpreting it, and um about the work they have to do on themselves. That's why I don't recommend any deck for anybody. I just like to look at this deck because to me, I really love the art and what it says. So anyway, we'll describe this deck. It has a nice light yellow background, which I'm sure Ashley loves.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have 5 wands. There's one main wand central to it. It kind of looks like it could even be a sword or like a cane. And then behind it, there's 4 other wands that are an X pattern, basically. So 2 going one way, the X, 2 the other. And then under it, it looks like it could be like a headdress or something. There's a bunch of feathers coming out, or like maybe a crown. And then coming out of all the swords, it looks like, maybe a flower, kind of like a flower bud unfurling, something like that. It's a very simple card. I would just suggest checking it out. Go to our Instagram at tarotbowl2, or you can even just search it on the Google or whatever. It's their Aleister Crowley Thoth deck, 4 of Wands. Ashley, what did you think about this card? Other than, I know you love the yellow, so.
I do love the yellow. For those of the listeners that maybe this is your first time listening, yellow is my power color. And so I love anything that, for me, it's just the vibrancy. It just gives me energy. It makes me feel like motivated. And I mean, I love like pretty much every color, but yellow, I get really drawn to it. So I'm looking at this. I love that you said it looks like a sword. I mean, similar to what I normally say is I'm very confused about kind of what's going on. I do love that it looks like there's like a bird on two of the cross wands, and then almost like a lotus flower on the other two, and then on the top it looks like snakes. Um, so I almost feel like you have, and then you have wings, right? Kind of coming off like at the very top. So I feel like you have that, to me shows like all four elements: earth, air, fire, water, kind of.
Mm, mhm.
I- I'm gonna be honest with you though, as I normally say, the word at the top is strife. It's not necessarily the most, it's not a word that I have a lot of positive associations with. So it just kind of looks like, to me, if I'm using the word strife, it's like I tried to build this structure, but it didn't even matter because there's this thing that comes down and destroys it right down the middle.
Yeah, well, I could say about the word strife, my experience with strife, just saying when I was in the Marine Corps, whenever we went through times that were really tough or we had to work a lot or we didn't have a lot of time off, we'll say, because we were working a bunch. Those were the times that you would say we were going through strife and it was a lot of hard work and it really sucked. We were away from our families for like 6 months on aircraft carrier, working every day, 12 hours a day, 12 off, at sea for like 2 months straight, not seeing land or a female for 2 months. So I guess you could say that's strife, but it also made me who I am. It made me a stronger person. Now, when I'm in a situation, like if I'm in a line at a grocery store, even if it's 20 people long, I'm just like, huh. I was like, you should have saw the line I waited for Thanksgiving dinner in 1995 when I was on an aircraft carrier. And when I got the two people ahead of me, they ran out of turkey. I was in line for an hour, hour and a half, hungry the whole time. Finally get up there, two people ahead of me, they run out of turkey and they start serving pork. And I was just like, ugh, not that, what I don't, I was just like, I really want a turkey. So anyway, if I gotta wait in line for 20, 30 minutes, I don't even care. It doesn't even phase me. And that's what I'm saying. Like that strife made me who I am. So I could have let it defeat me and I could have let it put me into despair. And I could have been like, what was me? Look at this. And threw my food and been a little bitch and starved to death. But I ate the food and went on and became a better person because of it. So I think that this card is a little more along. If you look at one of the Rider Waite, it's actually showing you the strife. This is kind of showing me anyway what you can align and what can come of it. It's like giving a glimpse of the future.
And so I'm looking now, I'm just looking at I was just looking up like different symbolic interpretations of it. It's saying that, so the lotus flower is going to be representative of femininity, and then you have the other, so I said bird but it's actually a phoenix,
Mm. Mhm.
which also is associated with water, because the head is blue, so it's giving us that like elemental kind of connectivity. And they have then up at the top it's the purple wings, so it's a combination of that red and the blue, right, to make that those purple wings. I guess it feels like there's a lot of balance. But we went through the numerology of all of the minor arcana cards, and just looking at the five, all the fives in the Thoth deck, these are the words that they have. So right, we just talked about strife, and then the cups was disappointment, and then the swords was defeat, and the pentacles or coins was worry.
Which is great.
And part of
Go
me,
ahead.
it's like, when we think of there being a full set of 10, right, that halfway point I feel like is often the hardest point, because you're
Yeah.
halfway there, you've done half the work, but you know what that first half entailed and how much it took to get to that point, and you know there's still halfway left to go. So I really kind of love the idea of that, of it could be seen as very negative, but knowing that, like, but you've already done half of it, so the hardest part is getting started, right?
Yeah, it's building that correct foundation because it's like when I started doing stand-up comedy, when I first started doing it, I got along and I had to get used to being on stage and tell my jokes. And then I got to a point where I hated all my jokes. And that was kind of like the five because I was very comfortable on stage. I can get up there. I had no issues with that. I can interact with the crowd if somebody like said something. I wasn't worried about that at all, but I just wasn't happy with what I was saying. So I had to go through that death again and start from the beginning. but it
Mhm.
wasn't really the beginning. So it's that halfway point of mastery. It's when you master the basics, and now you can work on the actual craft because you got the basics down. Just like DJing, it's the same thing. I had to learn how to push all the buttons, set up the equipment, and that was stressful enough. And then once that was done, and then actually, I had to think of what songs to play while and push. Oh, am I pushing the right buttons? But after a few years, the buttons were like robotic. So now I have to just focus on the crowd and the music.
Yep.
So at second point, and then it could be seen as strife and disappointment and worry, because that's what it seems like at the time. Especially in love, same thing with cups. You're going to go through maybe earlier relationships and you're going to have breakups and divorces and bad things happen to you. But then out of that, you have the base of it. You know what you want and you know what you don't want. It's going forward. And you could see the little signs early and you could just avoid those people or just make them friends instead of prospective mates or lovers.
But even going, so the word for cups was disappointment. And besides the idea of there being like the, relationships ending or whatever, I think so many times we have disillusioned ourselves with what is a relationship and what it needs to look like and how you need to act. And that, it has to mean forever or something like that. And I think that there's a disappointment when you get to the reality of the fact that it doesn't have to fit into this cookie cutter mold, you know? And there are some people that it will, and that's great for them. And then there's some people that it's like you'll never have that, but that's just because that's not what you're supposed to have.
Yeah.
And I think there's a disappointment there. It's like, well, why can't I have the fairy tale? And it's like, but that's what it is. It's a fairy tale. Let's look at Cinderella 3 years after her and the prince got together.
Yeah,
What's
exactly.
that look like?
Yeah.
Um So, okay. I do
Bum,
also
bum,
love
bum.
that in this card, like I said, the snakes. Um, the deck is really growing on me. I feel like as we go through it, I get to see a lot more of like the patterns,
Mm.
and it helps me come up with what I feel like is is the interpretation. Because right now I'm looking at all four of the fives in the Thoth deck, and um they all have that star, and it looks like they all have the star but with the top point pointing down.
Yeah. Well,
um so again, like I was saying before about like going through each deck, that's not going to be the same as the Rider Waite deck. The Rider Waite deck, you don't have that necessarily. And so you know when you get a new deck, kind of go through and see if you can find any connections between the numbers and the colors and the suits. Because if you listen to past episodes, I always seem very confused by this deck.
yeah, it's definitely an advanced deck, I guess you could say. And that's one of the reasons why I like to use it, because it is challenging for me. So it kind of makes me work a little more, so it challenges me. So if I'm doing a normal reading, I'll just use the Rider Waite and stuff like that. And I really want to get into the Marseille deck because apparently that's the more original one from France. From France. So it's pretty much what everyone's derived from. So I want to get myself one of those. So if you'd like to donate to the show and help us do that, we could use that too. That'd be great. You could do that by reaching out to me, Brandon Brandon at shadowworked.com is the best way to reach me there. Our website is terrible.com. We're going to be working on that in the future, but right now all our episodes are there. And like I said, if you want to go back and get the older ones, go to our anywhere you get podcasts and just search comedy LOL. It'll come right up, iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, all these places, all one word, comedy LOL, and you'll find all that.
Mhm. Okay, so I feel like we've done a really great job today talking about this. We'll come back next week and talk about the 6 of
Yes.
wands, and then maybe we'll also kind of jump back into going into the mage arcana and seeing if our thoughts there have changed.
All right. I like that. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for listening. Ashley, anything you want to say before we go? I already did most of the plugs. So,
No, I think we're good.
all right. Well, also go check out my book at shadowworked.com. And until next time,
Stay
stay
terrible.
terrible.